All right, welcome back to episode number 2. We put it out to you guys what we should be called, and we are officially Lee County Unscripted.
We are. Welcome back, everyone.
And unscripted comes into play because we want to be authentic. We want to be genuine. We want to give off what we are and what Lee County is about. We don't want to be rehearsed. And kind of unscripted just fell in suit with how we do business day to day.
Yeah, and it's a more relaxed atmosphere, and it's not so stressful. Trying to come up with topics. It's what we do every day. We converse with each other and try to figure out, what we're going to do for business, and then also like how we're going to tackle different situations that come to us. So
a lot of brainstorming and a lot of round tabling, essentially.
Yeah.
Bouncing ideas off of each other and things like that.
The career that we chose, well, the two careers that you chose, first responding and real estate, is literally unscripted. There's no day that you go in and the jobs are the same. Like, there's never a day that you go in and it's like, hey, so today, this and that. Like, yeah, you're going to have your to-dos that you need to get done, but really, it's the most unscripted job.
It's interesting that you just said the two professions that I chose. So let's talk about one of those things that happened here locally, and has been kind of very relevant and prevalent in the last few years, of hurricanes. And
those fun little things we speak of.
It's one of those things of like, we know it's a reality and a possibility here, living here. But for the people that are thinking about coming here and they see what happened with Hurricane Ian and now Hurricane Milton and Hurricane Helene, and we can go all the way back to Hurricane Donna in the 1960s. But Hurricane Ian was the wild
one that
card.
got us.
Yeah.
It was a very big surprise for all of us here. I think it was just unexpected. You don't see something like that come through. And it really opened up everybody's eyes to listen to your government officials. Like, when they say leave. Like, just, have a plan, be aware. Don't just, and listen, I was guilty of this when I was growing up.
Yeah.
I would be like, okay, we're going to have a hurricane party because there's a hurricane coming. And, and then you get older and you're like, oh, really, I should have a plan. And everybody has now learned, like, okay, we have to have a plan. It's not something that you may execute every single year. Like last year, no problem, nothing happened. But we had Hurricane Milton come through, and majority of us were okay. But there was some that had damage, on the barrier islands. But it's like you said, in California, they have wildfires and earthquakes.
Yeah.
Midwest, you get tornadoes.
Right.
Up north, we have those nor'easters.
Right. Like, there's no part of the country that you can go to that you can avoid some type of weather incident.
But you can be prepared for a snowstorm, and you can be prepared for a hurricane.
For sure.
An earthquake and a tornado. And I'm not saying anything against the Midwest. It's gorgeous, and California is as well. I just personally feel more comfortable knowing something's 2 weeks out, and you can prepare for it.
I don't want to feel the ground shaking underneath me.
No.
So unless I'm at like Universal Studios and some type of ride, right? Like that, I'm okay with that.
But that's a good point. Why do you think Walt Disney picked where he picked in Orlando?
I think that was blind luck, but I don't know.
No.
What was it? I really don't know.
Because they're not going to get hit with a tornado. Hurricane. They're so far inland that by the time the hurricane gets there, it's dissipated. He went there for a reason. And there was a lot of land, but inland was safer than
for sure
the barrier islands or being close to a coast. Yeah, you get more people close to the coast.
And I think what's important for people that aren't from here to realize is that there's a huge rebuilding process that had to happen with Fort Myers Beach, some of the barrier islands, even inland like North Fort Myers and things, and like Cape Coral and things like that. But it's the hurricane code today is the safest build that it's ever been. And it's not really so much the winds and things of that nature. It was the flooding. And all too often, like, we would hear storm surge. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Storms are good. Yeah,
listen,
great
story about me. I thought I'm just going to get some life vests for my dogs, and I got a rope, and I'll tie them together if we get a storm surge, and I can swim. I had no clue. Like, I was blind to what a storm surge was. I never knew. And this was during Irma. This was not.
So Irma was 2017.
Yeah. That's when I was like, it'll be fine. I had never heard of a storm surge prior to that.
Right.
We never had that.
And it's the flooding that has really affected. And we see it like, that comes into play for people when they're wanting flood insurance for their homes and stuff. And it changed the FEMA flood maps and everything and kind of changed this area. But we were able to as a community kind of rebuild from it.
And you learn so much from it too.
Yeah.
You know, you learn.
Get the hell out of town.
Yes, you do learn that, but there's like, you know, safety precautions. Again, like I said, listen to your government. Like if they say a storm surge is coming, don't take it lightly anymore. And, you know, do the things like maybe take your important documents that you need.
Right.
Take things that are, you know, important to you. Like, I don't know, birth certificates, passports.
And I can tell you from the first responder side of things, right? Like getting people out of the area is so monumental and beneficial to us, because then you take away the people that are just driving around to look at the damage that's happened.
Like rubbernecking on the highway.
Yeah.
Don't be a rubbernecker after a hurricane. And also people that are from out of town, stay where you are until we have a chance to get back up on our feet and then come down, you know, and if you want to help out or whatever it may be, but just give us a time to breathe. I think that's the biggest thing, is that we don't need an influx of cars coming in and clogging up the road. But let's talk about Ian. And that was 2 years ago. And look at the strides that we've made.
Yep.
And look at the developments that have come from Hurricane Ian. Not everything happens for a reason, because look, I was affected by it. You were affected by it, my family, everybody. But like the building codes that have changed, like you talked about, like they are even safer now than they were even in 2006 when they changed the codes after Charlie. Charlie was the one that they changed the codes after.
04. Charlie was 04.
04. Yeah, but they changed them. I think it was 06 is when they changed them. So we have learned a lot since then. And, you know, our infrastructures are changing in the roadways, you know, the drainage and stuff like that, because of we learned, okay, we need to move water better here.
And, you know, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because the amount of building that's going on here actually affects the drainage and the flow of the water as well.
You can't stop
stop growth, but you can do smart growth. And I think smart, responsible growth. And I think our area and our county actually has done a really good job for that. Not so much the infrastructure. The infrastructure makes me want to vomit sometimes.
I was going to say, you have your own opinions. I think I'm coming from a lot further away. Our infrastructure saw from 2020, from COVID, you know, we weren't ready. We weren't ready for the people that moved here to our great state. Like, we moved here for the same reasons they're moving here. It just wasn't ready.
And even with the hurricanes and the flooding happening, we're still having a large amount of people that want to relocate here.
1,000 people a day to Florida.
Right.
That's huge.
Like, we're November 1st right now. We're going into our prime season, weather season for the residents, where we can leave our doors and windows open and get that breeze and like everything that everyone wants, and why they come here from now until April. Yeah,
because the days are, you go to the beach, you go golfing, it's nice, and then you come home at night and you can open your windows, you can sit out on the patio, have dinner outside. I mean, how many times do you sit outside and have dinner near your pool? It's just like a whole nother experience of living here. Right. And in the mornings, you can get up and do stuff, go for a walk. You know what I guess a lot of people don't know is how many walking trails we have in Lee County.
Yeah.
Our parks and recs in Lee County is massive. There's parks all over, not just, you know, East Lee County, but even in South Fort Myers, you have the 6 Mile Slough. There you have Creation State Park. There's so many that you can just get out and walk in nature.
There's actually biking trails. There's some right by your house.
Yeah.
That park like by your house.
Not mountain bike, but like off-road biking.
We
don't got mountains in Florida. But
we don't have hills in Florida.
But not a lot of people know about that.
Right. And I think that's what gets lost in this of like, why do I want to relocate there and deal with these potential tragic situations? But we take for granted, because we've been here for over 20 years, of how beautiful this area is and what it has to offer for a lifestyle, especially like you and Tyson. You guys have a young child, right? Mine are older, but I opted to relocate here to raise them here because of the lifestyle and the ability to have them outside all the time and to do youth activities and youth sports year round. And, you know, like, I'm curious, like, what you think, because growing up, raising them in two different areas, like my youngest is 18. So yours is?
Two.
Better you than me.
Yes. Summers, it just depends on your kid, right? I think 2 years old is too early to tell. But like in the summer times is very much like the winter times up north. You know, you're not outside as much because it's really hot during the days. But then you have these, 7 months or so that are just like, okay, well, you can be outside all times of the day.
Yeah.
And as your kids get older, they get acclimated to the weather. Like really young, they get hot easily, but they'll get acclimated to the weather just like everybody else gets acclimated to the cold. It's just the opposite.
I think it's easier to cool off than it is to get warm.
And that's why, when we talk real estate, like, and not to keep bringing up real estate, but like when we're guiding our buyers and whatnot, like having a pool is definitely a plus down here, if not a must, if it's in your budget or if you're in a community.
Right.
We have so many great communities that offer more than just a pool. But having that pool in the summertime, it's not as hard to go through summer. Like in the winter, what are you going to do? It's not like you're going to, I don't know, go to a sauna. I don't know what you do in the winter to keep warm, really. Like here we can cool off in our pools.
Up north, the only way you got warm is when you got frostbite and your hands and feet are burning because you've been outside for so long. That's the reality. Like I remember that growing up. And so you actually have an interesting. So now I'm going to throw you a little curveball, a part of it, right? Like this is two part for you.
Unscripted.
This is completely unscripted here. Part of it is you were 9 months pregnant when Hurricane Ian came through. Actually, you were at my house.
Yes.
With Tyson and having contractions. I wasn't there.
You were off.
The rest of my family was there, but that had to be.
Oh, that was a fun time. We're bringing that up, huh?
You don't have to go in depth.
No. It was just.
It,
I mean, I in my mind thought, all right, we made it past the beginning of September, right? Because Katrina and Charlie, they were all in August, and then Irma happened in the beginning of September, and I was like, sweet, I'm 38 weeks pregnant. We're fine. Like we're at the end.
Right.
We'll be fine. And then all of a sudden I was like, this is going to be fun. So, talk to the doctor. He's like, you can either stay in the hospital, but you don't have a bed. You're going to have to sit in a chair during the hurricane, or you can just stay close by. And I was like, oh, I'm not staying in the hospital. That's not happening. So we opted to, go to your house, which was the smart decision because our house flooded.
Which was probably a little bit of blind luck as well, right? Like, because we hadn't heard a lot of storm surge and stuff and flooding and all that stuff.
And where I lived was, further north and, on the riverside of McGregor. But I was like, no, not a chance.
Right.
Not a chance.
Thank God you did.
Yeah. And, that was, but again, and I say this because when Helene went to North Carolina, like my heart sank for those people.
Yeah.
Like, I still get like anxiety talking about it.
Yeah,
but
it's that PTSD that kicks in.
It hit
for
me
sure.
as soon as you said that. I was like, oh God.
I got chills thinking about it.
But for me, looking at Hurricane Helene, I felt like, God, there's got to be something I can do. Like giving money isn't enough. Like they need bodies, they need people, they need help. But we down here, the nice thing about Florida is that we have the resources, we have the manpower, we have the workforce to get done what we need to get done. We're also very flat. We're not dealing with mudslides and not saying that's not a great place to live because it's freaking beautiful there. But they just don't have the manpower that we have here.
Nor do they have to deal with them as often as we deal with them here.
Right now we're kind of like professionals.
Yeah,
at this point, it is very sad. But we know what to do. We know when this comes, like what are the things we need to start with first. Clear the roadways, get the lights up, and work in that.
It'd be like throwing an earthquake at us right now.
Where we would know what to do.
The people that live in California or grew up in California,
they're
like,
oh,
this is nothing. You throw it here, we're gonna be like, oh, the world is about to opening.
Yep. Yeah.
So
coming home to a flooded home was rough, but we got back up and running really quickly, and that's kind of how I was saying before. Like this is 2 years post Ian, and we have had another one, but my gosh, like we really, really bounced back quickly, and following the guidelines and figuring out what you can and cannot do. That was like probably the toughest part is the unknown of like, what can I do? How do I make this go back to how it was?
Right.
But again, we
We learned a
listened.
lot about the 50% rule, and like that's a whole different
It's
topic.
a
But
whole nother podcast you can do.
that's a whole week worth of stuff. But we learned a lot of things from that.
Mm-hmm.
But our community is still strong, and it's
And
still
it brings your
here
community
and still
together.
growing. Yeah,
Yeah, like it camaraderie comes back, and Hurricane Katrina was terrible. They had looting and this and that because they just weren't prepared for the magnitude of that storm.
Oh, we had looting in Hurricane Ian.
We did, but it was not.
And I'll
like,
tell you, it was from my perspective. People were coming in. Those that were trying to capitalize on other people were coming in on boats because they couldn't get by on roads.
right. So we had,
And that made it
you
really
can't
hard.
protect all the waterways.
No.
It's so vast that you can't protect them. But I felt safe. Like even after the storm, it's pitch black. Like there's no road lights. There's nothing. It's somewhat ironic because it is really pretty. You get to see the stars, and you have no light
everything's dark.
pollution, and it's quiet. But you hear generators, but.
That's white noise at nighttime.
Yeah, but you just sleep. But I really did feel safe. I didn't feel like there was anybody trying to come loot us or take anything. And we were living in an RV for 3 months after the hurricane with a newborn, and I felt perfectly fine. I didn't feel like there was any reason for us to be nervous.
Right.
But like you said, the waterways, they were coming in, and they quickly got stopped.
Yeah, we dealt with a lot of that. So
You know better than I do.
I
how
do.
That goes.
Yeah,
And that's up to you if you want to.
Oh, we'll go down that path, I'm sure, here in a few minutes, because this is actually a question, because I've never had to experience it, of what it's like to send a spouse or a significant other off to a hurricane or to a staging area while I had to stay home. So your husband's in law enforcement. This past hurricane you had to deal with.
Yeah.
Newborn, dogs, everything. What's it like having to send him out
It's the worst feeling in the world. It is so.
and then still take care of the family
I remember
and not stay here?
in the decision to leave, like, you look back on it, you're like, that was so dumb. Why didn't I just leave like a day earlier or something? Whatever it is. But in the back of your mind, you're like, do I leave or do I stay? Do I leave or do I stay? Tyson and I have a very firm plan of anything over a category 3 or higher, you leave. Well, that's great. That's a great plan. But when you look at the map and it's this big cone and you're like, well, if it just shifts that way, then I don't need to leave.
Right.
And having a 2-year-old and 3 dogs that you're responsible for. Now, our governor did a great job, and he allowed for state of emergency. All hotels have to allow for pets.
Yeah.
Which was awesome. So we did decide to leave, but I remember the morning I left, I was crying so hard leaving because I'm like, I'm leaving. I'm going away from the storm, and at the same time, he's driving in to stay at the police station for the storm. Like it's not a good feeling to go through, but I know why he does it. And then post-storm, we were lucky enough that we didn't get hit with a hurricane, that we were spared. And he said there's a chance that they're going to make a team to go up and help with Hurricane Milton. And my first thought was like, oh God, you're going to be gone like another week. This is terrible. Now I, got to take care of Piper by myself and do all those things. And then I was like, no, if you go, like, and that was my first thought. And then I said it out loud and I was like, yeah, you should go. That's the right thing to do, because we got so much help from not just our agency here, but it was like Miami-Dade, Broward County, it wasn't Seminole was here, but there was another Muskega tribe police. Oh my gosh, they were so helpful to us. There's people cutting up our trees and this and that, like during Ian. So I was like, yeah, that's the right thing. He's like, that's how I felt too. I felt like I would want to go to repay the favor for what everybody did for us when we were at our worst time of our lives.
I can tell you right now, if you ever want to, any public safety individual, whether it's police, fire, EMS, and I'll probably even extend it to nurses and doctors as well. If there is a state of emergency or a natural disaster that has occurred and you handcuff them and make them not be able to go anywhere.
And not be able to communicate or see their family.
Like they're going to want to go. You're not going to be able to contain them, right? Because that's what we're it's just kind of like born in us. I don't know how to explain it. It's just a natural reaction of like, we need to go to that site or go wherever it is.
You need to help.
Yeah,
You're a helper.
to put us on essentially on ice or in a closet and be like, nah, just stand back. Like, holy cow, those individuals will go stir crazy quicker than anybody else.
I mean, you were in, staging for a long time, waiting to go out after Ian.
I was angry after Ian.
And you wanted to get out there and,
Honestly, I was pissed off.
Yeah.
I was really pissed off because Hurricane Ian went through, right? And it was probably the slowest moving storm I've ever seen in my life. And honestly, like,
I was like, you gotta go. Somebody else is knocking at the door ready to come out.
Someone's kicking that door open to come out. But it was so slow moving, and it ended up being the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. Post-storm, right? I've seen a lot of bad things. That was awful. From the not only seeing stuff, the hearing stuff and the smelling stuff, and it's overwhelming, but you have a job to do. But going back to like after Hurricane Ian left, they wouldn't let us go right away, and I knew like I was still working a dog, and I had people that were in Canine in Cape Coral and Fort Myers, and like, yeah, Mike, we're already out working. I'm like, holy cow, like, why am I sitting inside this building? Well, that's like
putting a dog in a cage.
I was angry, and I may have had some very direct words to some higher up people, and ultimately they did not let us go out until like 7 o'clock in the morning. So for 8 hours, and I knew there were thousands and thousands of people calling for help, and I couldn't go.
Yeah.
And I'm still angry about that to this day.
Yeah, but you're not going to, that's, it's kind of military. You're not going to defy? You're not going to go against their orders.
I mean, hindsight, I probably should have. Because I know like what we endured on Fort Myers Beach. I was down there for 2 weeks every single day after Hurricane Ian went through. And I know, like, I remember climbing up into buildings that should have been uninhabitable and calling out for somebody, and they answered. I'm like, holy cow, you're still here. But, like, what are you doing here?
But that's, again, how we learned so much from Ian.
Yeah.
That people didn't die in our county during the last storm surge.
Because a lot of people, like Fort Myers Beach, I think it was pretty much completely evacuated.
Yeah, and they start shutting off the water now.
Yeah, which smart.
So if you want to stay, you're not going to have any water.
Right. And we're not going to have any water pipe breaks. And like you said before, we've learned a lot as a area of things to do, things not to do. A lot of our utilities have gone underground in some areas. Like a lot of the HOAs and stuff are now underground, which, it could be is a good thing. But a lot of our poles and our evacuation route, every gas station, like they put into place years, have to have generators so people can get out. Yeah. So we've learned a lot of things. But from the public safety side, the mental health side of it, we do a really bad job of post any major incident, except for shootings, except for law officer-involved shootings.
Well, because it's a directly related death, like a directly involved death.
Yeah,
this is like kind of one removed, if there is any death.
Right. But we do a really bad job of getting the services to the officers and the dispatchers and the call takers. Like, I could not, like, I'm giving myself goosebumps here. This is insane. Like, I can't imagine being on the other line. At least I get closure because I get to see, or kind of closure. I didn't think about that. They don't.
They don't know what happens at the end of the call.
No, they hang up and they're on to the next one. Now you add into, they have 911 by video. So they can actually see what's going on as well. Oh. That's a new feature that has come out.
Like on their body cams?
No. So if people call 911 and they want to like FaceTime essentially, the call takers can see what the people are seeing. Oh. Which that's another whole topic, but imagine getting that call of someone hiding out in the attic. Yeah. And then the phone dies. They didn't have it then, but imagine having it now, right? So, but we do a really, really poor job, I think on a national level, not even just localized, on a national level, of giving the mental health programs for those that go
Yeah, and they always say it's out there, it's available for you. But how many of yous are going to go and
Sound
voluntarily
like my cousin Vinny.
How many of yous are really going to go out there and voluntarily do that?
No.
Because you're like, I'll deal with it later.
Right. I'll deal with it later. And you know, when it comes to fruition, I don't even know how we went down this because I wasn't meant to go down this far, but this is really the unscripted part. When it comes out is when that person retires.
Yeah.
Right? Because every day I'm going to have something else that's going to push another one down. And it's just going to get this little...
And then you're done.
Stacking it up. And then I'm done. And now everything that we've suppressed starts to ooze back up. It's almost like a septic tank.
Oh, God.
That's the only analogy I can come up with this quickly, is it's like a septic tank and all the garbage starts spewing out.
Comes to the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think mental health in America has come a long ways. You know, since I was a kid, never heard anybody was in therapy. And then, I'm like, hey, I gotta go talk to my therapist now. Like, let's just make sure I'm on the right path,
Right.
and there's so many other things you can go that route with. But like social media, you see so much more, stuff that now therapy is like needed, on an everyday basis. But for first responders, it's so underutilized that you need to push it. I don't know if pushing it is the right word, because they are of their own mindset. And if you tell them to do something, like, yeah, okay, not doing that.
Right.
But mandatory, like, I don't think mandatory is the right thing either, because if you're going to force someone to talk to someone, and what if they don't click, right? Like, you got to find someone that can speak to the first responders, maybe had first responder experience, whatever, but you have to click with that person.
Which, if we go back to the origination of here, it's because we had the connection of like how Blue Line Realty came to play, is because we had the connection and we related to the families, right? And kind of to your point of like, those mental health advocates or whoever it is should have some type of background, because cops, I don't know about firefighters. I grew up in a firefighter household. Cops aren't trusting of anybody other than other cops. Like, that's the reality of it.
Yeah, it's very true. Gosh, I didn't know much about the police until, I knew a little bit, through you.
Yeah.
But marrying a police officer, you definitely learn a lot about how they perceive things and how I would go about my life, and just a willy-nilly, like, it's a safe, everybody's great, everyone loves each other. And he's like, no, that's not how that works. I'm like, well, don't ruin it for me.
Yes, it's not a fairy tale. Like, there's not always a happy ending.
CC and I still go through life like that. We're still on that page.
It's true. You guys are.
But yeah, it's eye-opening to learn, and you have to respect that, because that's what they deal with on an everyday basis, and they voluntarily do this job.
Right. And like, so,
everybody chooses their career path, but real estate isn't deadly. Like, you're not like going out there with handguns on your hips.
There's been some agents that have been targeted and killed because of what they do, right? And
yes.
As an industry, we've
started taking really big safety precautions.
Like, Kim isn't allowed to go, not allowed, because that sounds like I'm controlling, but that's not it at all. But I chose,
and when I was younger, I would go meet anybody at a house and be like, here you go, show the house. And then I remember stepping back being like, oh, this isn't a good idea now. Like, this is bad. Like, somebody needs to have my location.
Right.
And I had a great group of girls that I worked with at my past office that we would all share locations with each other. So, like, before we partnered up, if I was going out, somebody knew where I was. And I would always tell them, hey, I've never met this person before. Here's their name. This is what I'm going to show them. If you don't hear from me, maybe call someone.
Send someone to
find me.
Recon a little bit.
And it has come a long ways, because when I got into the business, this was like the foreclosure. It was right at the bottom of the market. So
here in Vegas, the foreclosure capital of the world.
We were going to like the North Cape showing $50,000 homes to like anybody and like hoping that they're going to buy it, because it's so slow.
Right.
And now it's like we have Forewarn, which is a great program that's out there for us to make sure that we're not meeting up with somebody who says that they're somebody else when their phone number says they're somebody else. I've used that quite a bit. Luckily, we haven't had any issues.
But kind of like hurricanes, we have a plan in place for hurricanes, but we also have a plan in place for business. Like, you don't go out, or I don't go out, meet anyone that we don't know. we share our locations with each other all the time, but there may be a point in time where I'm like, hey, Kim, I got a bad vibe. You're coming with me, right? Like, so we already have a plan in place. So that's kind of...
Yeah, you don't want to get set up.
No.
You don't want to be like, if I'm going to a listing appointment and I'm like, I haven't met these people, but you have to go to people's homes in this business. So if I'm going to a listing appointment and I don't want to feel like I'm getting set up for something bad, I'm not going to tell them you're going to come with me. I'm going to be like, yeah,
Surprise.
and show up with a 6-foot guy, like however tall you are.
6'3".
6'3" guy, and they're like, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to do... If they had any thoughts of doing something stupid, well, I ain't going to do it with him now, because I can take the 5'1". I can't take the 6'1".
No, they get better luck with taking me than you.
Yeah. So, yes, we always have a plan in place because just nowadays is how it is.
Right. How did we get so morbid today? Like, how did that happen? So let's go on something positive, right? Like your family, your parents, they lost their entire house. I guess that's not positive, but they lost their entire house.
Here we go. And we're positive.
Yeah.
That.
Your parents lost their entire home because of Hurricane Ian. Like I remember the pictures of the water being above the roof.
Yeah.
Where are they at today?
They are on the home stretch. 2 years later, they are at drywall. I think, probably what goes next is flooring, I guess paint, then flooring, and hopefully in there by end of January, beginning of February. So we're almost 2.5 years out. But again, that's because of changes with permitting, how houses are built on a barrier island versus a regular, the regular city. So they're doing great. It's just eager to get in there.
Yeah, of course. They want their
old life back.
Yeah.
It disrupted their entire, two people that had dreams of always living on an island. When they retired, were living their dream. They were living their best life. I mean, not that they don't have a good life now, but it was their best life ever. And then this storm just uprooted everything.
For sure.
And the house that they had was I want to say it was 1960s. Like, it was there forever. Nothing happened to that house ever. And it was a really well-built house. Like, instead of like an old 2x4, it's like a real 2x4 and 2x6s in that house. So it was constructed really well. And nobody ever thought that it would come to that degree. But, they had to pivot and shift, and they did. And they're doing well. They just want to get the little grandkids back down there to play and do the beach and the boat and all that stuff that they dream of. But
you said pivot and Friends just came in my head.
Pivot. It was like us trying to get the other chair in here the other day. Pivot.
Sorry. But so part of that house, or part of the things that they changed, was the building code down there in Fort Myers Beach, right? So now it's no longer ground level.
I mean, it hasn't been ground level for a long time. It's been whatever. But like your just everything from the ground up. I think how far the pilings, and even pools have changed now. We're just learning about that. Like there's different things you have to do for pools now because of pools popping and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So again, lots of learning, and I look at life this way all the time because I was dumb and made a lot of stupid mistakes in life. And then I say mistakes, but then I'm like, yeah, but from every mistake I ever made, I have learned so much from. Like it takes you a while to figure out what you're going to learn from it. But again, Ian, no, it wasn't a mistake, quote unquote, but you learned from it. It was a crappy situation that you learned from.
Right. Like it made the area better and stronger. Right?
Definitely
like
made it stronger. Yeah.
The homes and all that stuff and the rebuild and the tourism is going to benefit that much more, essentially because of Hurricane Ian. And I hate to say that it's going to benefit on the backs of people losing their lives, because I don't ever want to lose sight of that. No. But we can't stop the hurricane that occurred, right? No. The only thing we can control is the regrowth and how we proceed and prepare for the future. So the tourism is, you have Margaritaville that's going on down there, which has been great. So with everything changing, there's nothing but sunny skies and sunsets down on Fort Myers Beach coming.
Yeah, new great things are coming from a terrible situation. It's just going to take a little while for regrowth, but there's so many opportunities on Fort Myers Beach.
Yeah, and I don't want to make this like this was isolated to just Fort Myers Beach
It's
because
Sanibel,
it's Sanibel, Captiva,
we
Pine
just know
Island,
Fort Myers
North Fort
'cause it's
Myers,
personal.
right? Like, yeah, those like this went. What I just happened to be on North Fort Myers Beach for 2 weeks straight.
North Fort Myers
So
Beach?
I mean, excuse me.
Where's that beach?
That one is in Lehigh. I was on Fort Myers Beach for 2 weeks straight, so it's very, very much embedded into my brain. But Cape Coral, all of them, like there was no part of Lee County, with the exception of probably Lehigh, that avoided any of the flooding.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. And I think also like when a storm comes through, it's nature, right? That's what nature naturally does. It takes out, dead trees and branches and, just like a fire in the Everglades burns the underneath. So like you don't get as many fires down the road. But I think part of Ian, it definitely wiped out a ton. So next time we had a hurricane, there wasn't as many down power lines and there wasn't as many down trees because we got rid of that, kind of like hanging on by a limb sort of part of our community. And then the next storm wasn't as bad. I think that's how nature really works. It sucks that we have to bear the brunt of it, but we're coming back so much better.
Right. Like we said, there's no place in this country that you can avoid any type of natural disaster. But this truly is like paradise living here.
Oh, yeah.
And I understand why people want to relocate here, and they should continue to want to relocate here.
Absolutely. It has so many benefits to moving down here. Like, how many times just getting outside and doing something is like, get your body moving, get some sun. You need vitamin D, and you got to get moving. And this is the state.
Disagrees. It does not need.
But
sun.
you don't need to go to the extreme of getting sunburned.
I can walk to my car and I'll be sunburned in the summertime. Like, let's be honest.
That's your own fault. Okay. Well, I think that's it for episode 2 of Lee County Unscripted. If you want to be on our podcast, reach out to us, send us a message, and we'll be happy to get you on here. Thanks.